If you didn't already know it, dogs love to sniff. I mean, haven't you been pulled to a spot that looks totally normal, but your dog's really into it? But did you know that we can actually put sniffing on cue and use it to build attention and recall? I'm Chelsea with Positive Futures, and today I'm going to show you how you can use the power of sniffing to increase the likelihood of your dog paying attention and coming when called. Now, in order to follow along with this tutorial, you're going to need to have a good attention on cue, which you can take a look at right here. I like to use the dog's name, or you can use a generic cue like watch me or look. We're also going to need some form of recall. I personally like to use what's called a hand target recall, and you can take a look at that tutorial here. I like to teach the dog to take their nose to touch my hand. Why? Because it's consistent every time. The dog knows exactly what to do, and they're close enough that I can put a hand on them to grab a collar or a harness for safety purposes. And the third thing that you're going to need to follow along with this tutorial is teaching your dog to go sniff. That's the cue I use, go sniff, and it means you're free to leave my side. You can roll, you can sniff, you can explore, you can dig, whatever you want to do, you have that freedom to do. When you first get to the park, make sure that you keep your long line close. We don't want to give the dog too much freedom before they're ready for it. It's always a great idea to practice a few warm-ups of your attention, recall, and sniff, just to make sure that your dog understands these behaviors in this brand new context with these new distractions. Make sure that you reward generously, make sure your dog is taking the food from you and is enthusiastic to work. After a quick warm-up, I like to take things on the road, so to speak. So I allow a little more of the line to slip through my fingers, and I start motion, allowing the dog to walk around and explore. After this initial warm-up phase, if the dog chooses to check in on their own, I make sure that I reinforce that. Occasionally, when the dog isn't too distracted, I'll call their name and reward a little attention or another recall, making sure that the dog can still work as this environment begins to change slightly. In your environment, it's important to know your dog. For me, I know that my dogs are going to be more interested in the parameter of this field, the trees and shrubs that line it over the grass that's in the middle. So as I begin to warm the dog up, I stay in this grassy area that has a little less interest to them, so that I can make sure, again, that the dog is able to work and give me attention and perform recalls when cued. Now that our dog is warmed up, responsive, and settled into the environment, we want to start to get closer to the part of the environment they really want to explore. We want to make sure that we are asking for attention, asking for recall, and then giving our dog access to explore and sniff. And here, order really matters because we want this big reinforcer of getting to explore the environment to happen at the end of this behavior sequence. So you'll cue attention. The moment you get eye contact from your dog, you're going to ask for that recall. You mark and reward the recall, and the moment you've reinforced that recall with food, you then release your dog back into the environment to go explore. Now, let's talk a little bit of troubleshooting, because sometimes you call your dog's name and they don't want to pay attention. One big contributing factor when we enter the great outdoors is distractions, right? And I can't change how good that bush smells or how good that tree smells, but I can change my proximity to the dog. Remember, the farther away you are, the harder it is for your dog to pay attention. So, if you call your dog's name and they seem unable to turn around, they're not being naughty, they're not being stubborn, it's just too challenging for them. So try to make it a little easier by taking a couple steps closer, making some secondary noises like kissing sounds to help prompt that attention. When you finally get it, make sure you reward them, take a few steps back and pay for that attention. And then when you set them up for another repetition, make it easier. You can start at a closer proximity. Or if this is your first time out, say, hey, maybe they're not ready for this. Maybe I need to work a little more on my attention grabber in a lower distraction environment so that my dog can kind of boost that history of reinforcement for the skill. Now, what can you expect after practicing this game with your dog? Well, the first thing you'll notice is that your dog will start to check in with you a little more. Oftentimes when we get out in the environment with our dog, we're not allowing them to sniff. And that's what they really want. So if we can put that on cue and we teach the dog that coming to us and giving us attention starts to give them more access to their environment, they'll start checking in with us more. And this is a wonderful way for you to start working on a little bit of distance work with your dog to strengthen these behaviors and even play around with starting that off-leash foundation. I hope that was helpful for you guys. If you want to learn some more recall games that we like to play with our dogs to really cultivate strong attention and recall, you might like this video here, where we work on teaching the dog how to engage with us and then go back to the environment, very similar to this game. That's a great game to play with puppies. And if you need a little more work on your attention with distractions, I think you'll like this playlist here, where we start to talk about impulse control and teaching the dog how to contain all of that excitement even when there's things going on around them. Happy training!